So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the person responsible for getting that money here, Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Buttigieg.
All right.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Steve, for illustrating the importance of this infrastructure work. When we get it right with public sector investment, we make it easier for the private sector and your employees and your workers, the people who count on you to thrive. And we think about just all that added time when there's a problem. The cost of that, the cost for customers, as well as the cost to your company, the cost in terms of emissions. That's exactly why we need to be taking steps like the one we're announcing today. Really appreciate the chance to be, as always, with a fellow mayor, Mayor Keegan. I see the pride that you have in this community, and hope that everyone in your community can benefit from this. Appreciate Representative Tonko's words and work. To be clear, we are able to announce good news like this because your member of Congress and your senators were there with us when we were pushing so hard to get this infrastructure bill done. And as he mentioned, water is part of that. Broadband is part of that. That holistic approach that he stressed was controversial 2 years ago. A lot of people said if it isn't a road or a bridge, it isn't infrastructure. We know that water is infrastructure because you need it to live. We know that internet access is infrastructure because it's as important to economic success as a connection to the interstate highway system. But we also still know that roads and bridges are infrastructure, which is why we're here today celebrating this good news. And of course, it's a real pleasure to be here with Governor Hochul, a governor who understands the importance of infrastructure. I know this is a busy season for you right now, and for Chairman Kennedy and all of your colleagues getting this right. I just want to emphasize that good news continues to come because we have states stepping up alongside the federal government at long last after years and years of so-called infrastructure weeks that came and went without result. Working together now, all putting our money where our mouth is to make this America's infrastructure decade. And it does always feel, Governor, like it's always good news when I see you. A month ago, as she mentioned, we were in Buffalo celebrating that good news. A month before that, we were with the President celebrating that key piece of funding for the Hudson River Tunnel. And there is more good. We do not, for the record, play favorites, but there is more good news where that came from New York and for every part of the country. And I had a chance to speak with both Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand over the last couple of days. And while they can't be here, I know both of them are excited about this. And again, we're thankful to both of them for helping make all of this possible. So just over a century ago, there was a young, promising, intelligent, and curious Army lieutenant colonel who joined a cross-country convoy that was tasked with assessing our national infrastructure. And what he found and what he noted was a dangerous and poorly connected patchwork of roads and paths whose condition was not just an inconvenience for local economies, but actually a concern for national security as well, because it was unsuitable for national defense purposes. That young Lieutenant Colonel Dwight Eisenhower went on, of course, to become President of the United States. And when he did, with that experience as part of his foundation, he set out to do unprecedented work on the highways and bridges of the United States of America. And the interstate highway system that resulted from that transformed travel and commerce, revolutionized public safety, made American ingenuity the envy of the world, and arguably did more to knit this nation together physically than anything since the Transcontinental Railroad. And yet, over the decades, we allowed significant parts of that system to fall into a state of disrepair. Around 43,000 bridges nationwide are in poor condition. Closures, or worse, have become more and more common. And the American people feel the impact. When bridges have to close for repairs, or when they begin to fail, it cuts off sometimes an entire community. It adds time to commutes. It costs money for businesses, as we were hearing about it. It can even delay ambulances and fire trucks from getting to where they need to be to respond to an emergency. It means truckers have to take longer routes, which means consumers have to pay more for deliveries, and working parents have to spend more money on gas and more time away from their kids. That's what this is really about. Bridges aren't just concrete, asphalt, and steel. They are engines of economic growth, and they are vital connections for communities. That is why the Biden-Harris administration is working to deliver the largest investment in America's bridges since President Eisenhower created the interstate highway system. And today we're proud to be announcing in 9 locations around the country that we are repairing key bridges, including this Castleton Bridge right here in New York State. And we're delighted to be doing that. About 17, yeah. All right, so good now. About 17,000 people cross that bridge every day, and the project is set to save millions of dollars in travel costs, as well as saving taxpayers even more in maintenance costs. And it's about time, because if you look at that bridge, it represents the very latest engineering and construction that was available in the late 1950s. But today, it takes near monthly repairs just to keep it in service. And if you go, while there is a great deal to be proud of around here, and the work that has been done to keep the bridge operating is heroic, if you actually Google the Castleton Bridge, you'll find a bunch of 1-star reviews from travelers expressing their frustration about what it takes to drive over it. So thankfully, this project's going to include a new eastbound bridge deck, a crash-tested railing for safety, better drainage, which is going to help prevent hydroplaning, and all of that is going to make the Castleton Bridge dramatically safer for the people who count on it, and cut down on emergency repairs, which means fewer of those delays and detours and closures. And that's in addition to the construction project already underway to replace the westbound bridge deck. Together, these projects are set to extend the useful life of this bridge by another 50 years, meaning that our children and grandchildren will one day have a chance to take advantage of it too, and I would hope leave their own 5-star Google reviews about their experience. And again, this is one of 9 bridges or sets of bridges that we're fixing in this latest round of grants. We've got projects in places like San Diego and Madison, as well as some of the most rural parts of the country, from the Oklahoma Panhandle to rural South Carolina. All told, now, as of now, we have launched work on more than 4,600 bridge repairs, replacements, and rehabilitations across the country, from small overpasses that serve as the only road connecting a small rural town to national iconic landmarks like the Golden Gate Bridge. What that means is not just about the physical infrastructure. It's about lives getting better and a whole lot of good-paying jobs for American workers. And I want to emphasize, as my colleagues and I are fanning out across the country, that this is one of many ways that the Biden-Harris administration is investing in America. And it's working. Since the president took office, we have seen the creation of a record 12 million new jobs. We're seeing some of the lowest unemployment rates in 50 years, and the private sector has invested over $425 billion in new manufacturing, including here in New York State. Seniors on Medicare and millions more can now get insulin for just $35 a month. 16 million more households already have new access or better access to affordable high-speed internet. And now every week we are seeing announcements like today's and starting to see shovels hit the ground on infrastructure projects like this one. Now, unbelievably, and yet all too believably, even this can be a partisan or political issue in Washington, as we see legislation being put forward by some, I would say some, not all, of our Republican friends across the aisle who would want to reverse some of the work that we're doing, which would, of course, increase the costs that we have been fighting to lower. But I think that when you get outside of the precincts of Capitol Hill, you find pretty quickly that this need not be a partisan or political issue, because everyone is better off when we have the right kind of infrastructure that we can count on for the rest of our lives. So I want to again commend and applaud all of the local leadership that has gone into making this project a success in a very competitive round of funding. And I want to thank everyone who has helped make it possible under the President's leadership, and with support from leaders like Representative Tonko, Leader Schumer, and Senator Gillibrand, to partner with state leaders like Governor Hochul and her colleagues to deliver on this infrastructure decade that's going to make us proud for many more decades to come. With that, I thank you again for being part of this celebration. Thank you. I think we have a little bit of time for some media questions on the topic. I'll be quarterbacked by my colleague Carrie in the red coat.
Yeah, like I said, just a couple minutes, but we're going to try to stay on topic here. We're going to start with Tom Eskins of Channel 6.
Secretary Mayor.
Hi.
You spoke a bit at the end there, the competitiveness of the process between states and municipalities, and you mentioned this is a long time coming for this bridge. What did the Thruway Authority do differently to get these funds allocated finally for something that really needed?
Well, we look at a lot of factors when we're going through these applications. Some of them are very technical. They have to do with the project sponsor being ready to deliver. We need to make sure that soon after we get those funds moving, they're actually in a position to do construction. We've seen that here. Other things I would point to include not just the functionality, the economic benefit, but that it's paired with safety improvements. So when you hear about features that are going to make cars less likely to hydroplane or give you that proper railing, things that just weren't in the picture when bridges were, even the best bridges were being designed in the 1950s. We know that this can also serve to save lives. And there's even a climate benefit from the reduction in delays and emissions. So we love that all of those benefits are knitted together in this one project, and that's part of what helped it stand out in a very competitive field.
All right, our next question goes to Jamie Delano at Nexstar.
Hi.
Besides funding for this project, are there any other projects or money that New York State can expect to receive?
Oh, yes. First of all, there are billions of dollars in formula funding coming through to New York alone just for roads and bridges alone. And those will be programmed by the state DOT based on their priorities they've put forward. But we also have the competitive side. And I would be shocked if we did not continue to see more competitive applications coming in. Many communities have already done very well. In addition to that, Kensington Expressway we talked about, downtown Buffalo got a $25 million grant to improve what they're doing downtown. Albany's getting some airport improvements that are going to make a difference in the ATC tower there. Some things you'll never notice unless you happen to work there or be deeply involved, back of house stuff. Other things that everybody will notice when we're able to fund communities doing safety plans to make their roads and streets safer for people. And that's just to name a few. So there's a lot more good news where this came from, and we love coming together to celebrate good news.
All right, our next question goes to Elise with Exhibit 5.
Please remind WEF activities and talk about how the region has an impact on other rural areas like this.
Well, one of the things we know is that when you have a key connection point like this bridge, it's not just important for those who are literally within sight of the bridge, but for people who might live a couple hundred miles away, but whose delivery is going to take longer or cost more. Or who will find themselves maybe not in a commuting radius that they would have otherwise been in if there's a reliable connection. So as you look at what it takes to connect Albany County to points east, all of that depends on a lot of places that can become a single point of failure. And I would add to that the good-paying jobs, good-paying union jobs associated with so much of this construction that's going to benefit people too. And that's what really excites us about this, that the benefits cascade out through to so many communities. So if you're like all of us standing up here, you live and breathe this stuff. But a lot of people will never really give it that much thought, and they'll still be better off because of the economic benefits and the safety benefits.
All right, Vic, any other questions on the conference or infrastructure? On infrastructure, the Biden administration environmental review. Why is that, and when do you think that there are platforms?
Well, we're talking about something that is really new in terms of scope and scale relative to processing environmental reviews on something that we maybe do hundreds of in a year, like a bridge project, for example. But certainly the Federal Highway Administration is working hard on that process. I don't have any news to make about it today, but certainly one that's getting a lot of good attention and resources to make sure the process is followed and done well.
Secretary, what do you make of states potentially overriding local zoning to incentivize housing development or transit-oriented development?
Well, let me say this. Every state has its own story, and there are different processes going on between communities and states. I'll tell you, certainly as a former mayor, we work very hard to try to make sure we're putting together the right local solutions, and we welcome states that are thinking about this in new ways. From a federal perspective, what we want to make sure of is that our federal dollars look at the big picture. The federal government doesn't have always the best history of contemplating things holistically. And you look at how we're organized. The org chart of the federal executive branch has transportation over here and housing over there, but we've been working across those silos because these things may not always be integrated administratively, but they're definitely integrated in your family budget. Matter of fact, lower income Americans are likely to pay 40% or more of their income when you look at housing and transportation combined. They don't have the luxury of worrying about transportation one year and housing the next. And certainly in New York State, there are a lot of examples of folks who face the choice between either living in possibly far away from work so they can be somewhere they can afford, or living in a place they can't afford to really live in order to be close to work. I know there are different strategies, different solutions to that, but the most important thing is that we want to make sure that we're offering things like the transit-oriented development pilot funding that's now available federally to support both states and local governments that are trying to create solutions and make sure that we get more affordable housing built and get people better connected to work through the housing that they have. Got a little wake coming our way. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a major focus for us to make sure that project delivery happens more quickly and more affordably than it has happened in recent years in the U.S. And by the way, as you look across the world, the bigger the project, the more likely it typically comes in late and over budget. So we know we're swimming upstream on that. But we also know if we get certain things right up front, we can increase the chances that the project will succeed on time and on budget. Some of those include making sure that there's good dialogue about permitting processes, so there's no surprises. It means making sure that there's good local community input up front, so it doesn't lead to litigation or other disruptions on the back end. And that is an important difference with China. In China, you can just command people to go along with a project, whether it's good for them or not. We're not looking to emulate that. But we are looking to make sure that the process is swift and prompt, and if anything takes 7 steps that could have been done in 4 without sacrificing our policy objectives, or if something is 100 pages and it could have been 50, and I will confess that's true of our notices of funding opportunities. So we have cut if you've ever, some folks here I'm sure have dealt with a NOFO or two in your time. Cutting the page count of a NOFO, which we've been working to do, sounds like a very technical move. But what it really represents is making the entire process more user-friendly for communities, whether they have the resources of a New York City or whether it's a community the size of Castleton, to be able to access those federal funds and work with those federal processes quickly and smoothly.
Governor, I had a question
very
on
much.
the budget.
I'm ready.
Could you just provide us an update of where things stand on
Just
negotiations, especially when it comes to bail, and when you anticipate your final budget might get done?
As I've said from the beginning, the right budget is more important than an on-time budget. And we've been working around the clock. My team has not left town. We've had many, many meetings ourselves internally, just came from one. Our teams are doing a lot of Zoom calls with others who are not here, and we're going to work hard through the weekend. So I've laid out my priorities about how to make New York safer, more livable, and more affordable. And that's the budget I plan to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.